What's up, duelists? Welcome, all new subscribers, all new everything from the last weekend at RBET Moreno Valley. That event was an absolute blast. I'm going to be getting some banger content from Moreno Valley, over the next few days, but I wanted to give you guys a classic look at what my videos look like, basically, which is I build a new deck and I take it on a little bit of a spin. I take it on a little bit of a tour. Today I've got a brand new Gladiator Beast build. Why does this build look this way? Well, let's be honest. Hero Beat is the most popular deck right now. Why? Beats me. I actually have no idea why it's the most popular deck. I don't even think it's anywhere near the best deck. I don't even think it's like that exceptional of a deck. But, when there is a very defined meta, you can build Gladiator Beasts in a way to combat that meta. And I think that that's when this deck really shines, is when something starts to become a little too dominant. On top of that, we've also got a resurgence in dragons, and Dragon Turbo in particularly, as it has recently won Moreno Valley, and it also won the last online RBET as well. So winning two of the three last biggest tournaments is pretty insane for Dragon Turbo. And one of the decks that absolutely body bags Dragon Turbo is Gladiator Beast. Why is that? Because you can just summon Gladiator Beast Heraclinos, and they can't really play. So that's kind of the game plan versus those two decks, is to have a favorable matchup. In order to have a favorable matchup versus Hero Beat, you have to have 3 Gladiator Beast Hoplomas. Why? Because you just set him on turn 1 and they cannot beat it. Like, I am dead ass, they cannot beat this card. It is pretty much an FTK versus that deck. If they do summon Diva and, try to make a synchro, you have a couple of different outs. You've got double smashing, triple book, double compulsory, and double bottomless, as well as double Icarus to help answer resolve things alongside the Mirror Force as well. So you have a lot of ways to deal with resolve threats. Shrink can also handle Android to a degree. But yeah, turn 1 set Hoplomus is really good into this meta of Hero Beat. Black Wings is still popular, even though it's not nearly as popular as it was a few months ago. That's one thing about Edison, is if a meta ever gets too popular, I have a sneaking feeling that things will correct themselves. And this is sort of one of my attempts to help correct this metagame. On top of this, we're not playing any Test Tigers. I've found that Test Tiger is a little bit inconsistent in this deck. It leads to weird draws where you draw multiple Tigers, not enough Glads, or it leads to draws where you're just playing into back row willy-nilly and you're forced to risk into back row a little bit too much. So we're not playing any of that. Instead, we're playing the powerful Gores and Morphing Jar. These two cards are very good into back row. They're very good into back row heavy decks. Well, Jar isn't good into back row heavy decks, but it helps you throw away your resources and then come back into a game after playing a little bit aggressively. And we're also playing triple Proving Ground, because after a turn 1 set Hoplomus, the best thing you can do is Proving Ground to find your bestiary and then make Geyserist. So that's kind of the game plan. Sideboard is an interesting strategy. We got Secutor, again, to bring it against that Dragon Turbo deck, so we can get our +2 and make an easy Heraclinos. We got a second Ready Ari. This is very important. A lot of times you'll need the second Ready Ari, particularly against Frogs and Frog Heroes, but also against other hero decks, just because the double banish is so key. And additionally, because you need a third water for the super polys that you're bringing in to bump up your water and earth numbers. Between the super polys, or between the Gladiator Proving Grounds and the Murmillo, double Ready Ari, triple Hoplomus, Morphing Jar, double Darius, you should have plenty of targets for your super polys to always be live versus heroes. This card's an absolute blowout versus that deck. You basically just take their Stratos, you make an absolute 0 out of it, and you're instantly ahead. Triple Burden of the Mighty, because against Alias decks, you just side this in, you activate it, and then it invalidates most of their deck. Double Defissure, this just banishes shit. Trap Dust Shoot, Mind Crush, the vibes. Dust Tornado, the vibes, exactly. Don't have a ton of stuff for Black Wings, but I think this sort of style of list, where you have a ton of spot removal, a couple of roads, and a trap stun, does pretty well against Black Wings already. So that's the general game plan. I'm going to show you guys 3 replays. I'm going to give you some banger replay commentary. So my first replay is up against Desu. This is not the first game I played with this deck. This is the second game I played with this deck. So you notice I open up a lot of back row here, which is kind of nice, but also kind of not, because only one of these back row is really truly live, which is the bottomless trap hole. So we have a pretty bricked hand. That being said, between 3 Proving Ground, 2 Equest, and Bestiary, plus any Glad that can tag into one of these guys, Icarus attack is turned on pretty frequently in this deck. So yeah, I think this is one of the draws to playing this deck to me, is the fact that it can play Icarus attack. I think if you're not playing Icarus attack, you probably shouldn't be playing this deck, realistically. But yeah, just set 3 and pass. Just want to have one of the Icarus down. Want to conceal the Starlight from Space Typhoon Blind. And also just want to have Bottomless live as early as turn 1. Opponent goes for Future Fusion, to which we have no fucking answer, which is awesome. But they don't send a Malicious, which is good. Because if they had sent Malicious and tried to make a Stardust, we probably would have struggled this game. We might not have lost, but we would have struggled for sure. They then set 3 back row and pass the turn. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. They have a Diamond Dude in a deck with a bunch of back row. That's curious. We draw Mirror Force, so I'm like, all right, I'll just set that and pass. That will give us an additional out to this Absolute Zero that's coming our way. Activates Call, summons out the Ocean, and here I'm like, can they priority activate Ocean on the summon? Not that it would have really changed this game all that much, but I'm not sure if they can or if they can't, because it's during the standby phase. They probably can, right? It's not a quick effect. I don't really know. I just said bottomless trap holes on the summon. I didn't answer his question. I just said bottomless trap holes on the summon. So I don't know. I don't know if he gets the effect. I don't know if he doesn't. The opponent might have looked it up. I don't really know. I just said I'm just doing this on the summon. If he can priority activate it there, he would have added back the Diamond Dude. I don't think it changes this game all that much, but yeah, we just banished that guy. They set a card. You can see the stats, so you know what's happening here. I draw a quest. I go ahead and set the second Icarus attack and pass the turn. The reason I do this is because I know that that Absolute Zero is getting summoned right now, and I do not want to play my eQuest into that Absolute Zero destruction. I just want this Absolute Zero to come down, me to activate Mirror Force on that Absolute Zero, and pretty much be chilling. Summon Stratos off the top, activates the effect. So if they had added Diamond Dude, they might have summoned the Diamond Dude last turn and milled up Stark Goblin. So it would have altered this game a little bit, but I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if that's what they would have done. They probably would have just set this Morphing Jar nonetheless. Like, that's what I would have done if I was them. It was just set Jar either way, even if I was able to add back the Diamond Dude. So, yeah. They activate the Stratos to destroy the back row, and I'm like, all right, that resolves. And they hit one of my 2 Icarus attacks. So I'm like, okay. Well, that's why we set everything, to kind of insulate us from like spot removal from Stratos, particularly here. We go for Mirror Force, and they have no stop. So I'm like, okay, no road, no Mirror Force, no road, no Judgment, which is good, because that means our Icarus attack will probably also be live. They elect not to flip their Jar here, which is pretty insane. If I was them, I might have considered flipping it just to get a Miracle Fusion and then resolve that bad boy, but they didn't do that. So we're able to summon our eQuest and just attack. Now, this is a pretty good Jar for them. This is a +1 Jar. They do lose their Jar, but they trade 3 cards for 1. So it's a +1 Jar. We discard our hand. We get to draw 5 new cards, and they also get to draw 5 new cards. Now, this isn't the worst. If they spend a card trying to out the quest, we can use Icarus attack to blow it up, or blow up other cards. So we can get a 3 for 2 to kind of grind our card advantage back. We're kind of at parity here, but they have a lot more potential threats between Miracle Fusion, Polymerization, even. Now that they've revealed King of the Swamp, I'm learning a little bit more about their deck. And the fact that they set this Morphing Jar here leads me to believe that most of their set cards are actually spell cards. So I'm going to try to go into Bestiary to try and blow up one of these back rows, because I'm like, okay, he hasn't activated a spell card on the attack, on the summon of a quest. He hasn't activated it a spell card, a trap card. He didn't activate it to protect his guy from Mirror Force. So I'm just going to go straight up into Bestiary. Bestiary, worst case scenario, he has like bottomless, but then we can chain Icarus and blow up the other 2. So we get a nice 3 for 2 either way. So I'm just going to go into Bestiary. That's what I'm feeling here. Go ahead and just blind target 1, and we hit an Eradicator Epidemic Virus. So now I know that his deck is the Destiny and Dragoon deck, which is an interesting deck. It's a deck that has, I think, a lot of potential to do some cool stuff in the right metagame, and I think right now is a metagame where Eradicator Epidemic Virus is actually so good that Destiny and Dragoon has viability. Normally this card is a little bit sus because there are a lot of decks playing like, heavy effect monster lineups, but right now, like, if you think about the decks that we were mentioning earlier, Heroes, they play a lot of spell cards. Naming spell is really strong. And then also against Dragon decks, naming spell card is very strong there as well. So, yeah, I think Eradicator Epidemic Virus is probably the best it's going to be in a very long time. Against Black Wings, you can name trap cards. It's pretty solid. So we go ahead and set that Book of Moon. We now have 2 pieces of interaction. One's a book and one's an Icarus attack. But we're still a little shaky here. We kind of need them to mess up. He goes trade in, pitch Dogma, draw 2 cards. And he does still have 8 cards to our 8. So we are kind of at an even amount. And we only have 2 interruptions. So if he has a way to make 3 plays happen this turn, or if one of those plays is create a Destiny Endergoon, it might be really hard for us to win because Destiny Endergoon priority pop the Bestiari. We can chain Icarus, blow up the Destiny Endergoon, but our Rediari is actually in our hand, and we have no way to get it out of our hand and into our deck, so we can't tag into it to banish that Destiny Endergoon. So we're actually going to have a really tough time if he summons a Destiny Endergoon this turn. He goes for another trade-in, draws 2 more cards. Now, I like and dislike trade-in in these types of decks. Yes, it lets you filter through your decks while pitching these dead dogmas, but at the same time, it also makes it less and less likely that you'll ever resolve polymerization. One thing that comes up later in this game, but I'm going to mention it, is you can't use King of the Swamp to substitute for Destiny Endergoon, because Destiny Endergoon has the clause, must be fusion summoned with the above fusion materials. Opponent goes for Heavy Storm. Thankfully, that gives us another threat here in Stardust Dragon, and this may bait him into going Miracle Fusion, attack the Stardust Dragon as a preemptive strike, and it may deflect the Destiny Endergoon priority pop the Bestiari, which is the play I was the most scared of here. So that Heavy Storm, pretty good for us, actually, because we're able to Starlight Road. He goes for the Miracle Fusion. Was he able to make a Destiny Endergoon? Maybe. He has Destiny Draw, he could have pitched Plasma, and then maybe he could have done something. He would have had to draw Polymerization and another material, but it is possible that this could have happened. So he goes for Miracle Fusion, summons Absolute Zero, and then attacks into the Stardust. So one thing I think he could have done differently here was summon the Prisma as well, try and run over both of the monsters. In the case that I have an out for Absolute Zero, then negate its effect with Stardust, you'll want to run over this Bestiari with the Prisma. So I think that that's a little bit of an error on my opponent's part here, but nonetheless, we would have had Icarus attack to deal with the cards. So yeah, here we are. We book the Absolute Zero. The Absolute Zero goes face down, and that's really good for us because now our Bestiari is sticking around. Next turn, we can contact fuse with our Rediari and our Bestiari and make Geyserus blow up the Absolute Zero while it's face down, meaning it won't get its effect to destroy, and just have our Rediari back in our deck, which is really key here. He goes for that Reckless Creed main phase 2, activates Destiny Draw again. Again, probably should have just done all of this main phase 1 to try and hit more of this type of effect, more Miracle Fusion, more Upstart Goblin, that sort of stuff. Probably should have just blown all the resources main 1 to try and find something that you can actually play here. Sets a couple of back row and passes the turn. I deliberated there for a very long time about end phase Icarus attacking, but I figured I really need to get my Rediari back in the deck, so I'm just going to try to go for this Geyserus, and hopefully the Stardust Dragon is enough to protect it. Plus, Geyserus is a winged beast for my Icarus attack. So we go for the contact into Geyserus, destroy the guy and the back row. We hit the Epidemic Virus again. Absolute Zero, he tries to activate it, but I clarify with him that if Absolute Zero leaves the field while face down, if it's destroyed or banished or removed from the field with compulsory or like Phoenix Wing or something like that while face down, it won't activate, which is just a ruling in Edison format. So we attack for 24, attack for 25, tag out the Geyserus, we grab Darius and Laquari. Darius is going to special summon back the other Laquari, and at this point he has to use the second Reckless because we are going to go into Heraklinos. And I'm just kind of praging that Heraklinos plus 4 negates is good enough. He tries to e-call here, and I'm just like, how do you have another target? Like Ocean, Stratos, and then like 12 cards left in deck? That's pretty crazy. So I was thinking probably Prisma is the last target, but the Prisma is in hand. So yeah, it's not going to work out for him. He's got a Miracle Fusion, but that's just an easy negate with Heraklinos, and we can just go to the next game. So this is kind of the reason I really like this deck right now, even against hero decks, which are typically a bad matchup, is because everybody's payoff at the moment is Miracle Fusion, and Heraklinos is just so good at just like closing out middle to late games versus people who are relying on Miracle Fusion as their middle to late game. Game 2, I actually took a screenshot of how I sided in this matchup. Let me go ahead and pull that up for you. So for the game 2, let me see, I believe this is the screenshot. There we go. No, that's not it. I apologize. Oh, this is it, actually, yeah. This is it. So I sided out Morphing Jar. I didn't want to reload his hand. I sided out Heavy Storm because most of his back row looked kind of bad. I sided out Space Typhoon for the same reason. I sided out one War Chariot. War Chariot is good, but he can just do something like Prisma attack or like Stratos no effect attack. And it just runs over my monster, and I'm just like not super happy about that. I sided out the Icarus because Icarus versus Destiny Endergoon in particular is not very good. You want to rely on stuff like Bottomless or Compulsory. I was a little bit nervous about him having Imperial Iron Wall, so our Bottomless could have been dead in those instances, but I figured, you know, fuck it, we'll figure it out if that happens. I sided out the Trapstone. Again, I think his back row is pretty bad. And I sided out Call of the Haunted because I figured if we're bringing in the Dimensional Fissures, we won't get a lot of opportunities to use Call of the Haunted. Then I sided in Ready Ari for the extra water, the triple Super Poly, of course, because it is a hero matchup. Sided in the 2D Fissures, and then Trap Dust Shoot plus Mind Crush. Trap Dust Shoot because he's on Polymerization. Mind Crush because he's on Heroes. Mind Crush is basically Trap Dust Shoot versus Heroes because they surge so much. So yeah, we open up pretty poorly. He goes Upstart Goblin, we gain 1,000. We just don't have a guy. He goes Trade In, Pitch Dogma, Set Monster, Set Back Row, Pass. I draw Hoplimus, and the only monster I've seen him set so far is Morphing Jar. I think it's pretty stupid for him to leave in the Morphing Jar, but considering he didn't know the Absolute Zero ruling, I actually predicted him to not know how to sideboard super correctly against Gladiator Beasts. So I was like, that's probably Morphing Jar, and he just has a handful of monsters. So I'm just going to shotgun it into Morphing Jar. Unfortunately, it is Snowman Eater, and I kind of get fucked here. If I had just either summoned the Hoplimus set Chariot or set the Hoplimus set Chariot, I probably would have won this game, but like immediately. I would have won it immediately. Main phase 2, I have to Smashing the Snowman because his Miracle is live. He can Miracle, and we will just fucking lose to that. Although, in hindsight, I probably should have just let him Miracle and then Smashing to the Absolute Zero. But he has Heavy Storm, so it's a good thing I used the Smashing. So yeah, we kind of fall pretty far behind here. He goes Stratos, Search Plasma, and I'm like, oh, this is bad. He attacks for 1,800. We kind of got owned by that Heavy Storm. We summon Laquari, he doesn't do anything. We activate the second D-Fissure, we attack, and then we shrink his monster. And then we go ahead and tag out into Hoplimus in defense. I'm like, maybe he can't get over this, and then we can like stall enough to get to a point where this actually does something. But he has M-Phase Scapegoat, so he has Heavy Storm plus Scapegoat and Stratos. So he has a lot of one-ofs that dig him out of this situation, which is pretty good for him. And on top of that, he has Polymerization, and this is where we go over that ruling. Because it says a fusion of this card can only be done with the above fusion materials, you can't use fusion substitutes for it. That's just the ruling on it. So instead, he makes Absolute Zero, which is just going to beat me all the same, more or less. So we're going to go into the next game here for a second. Another reason I tagged into Hoplimus was if his back row was specifically Scapegoat, it was the weakest monster I could summon for Plasma to take. Not that that really matters, because nothing in my deck can attack over 2250. Yeah, sideboard the same, just resubmit. This game, we have a much nicer hand. We have Laquari plus Starlight Road, so yeah, we're not going to lose to Heavy Storm, which I'm assuming he is like his key piece of back removal. We draw Darius, which is okay. You want to hold the Proving Ground here in case they open up with Dust Shoot. And also because we do want to search for Bestiari, but we don't want to search for Bestiari right now. So we're just going to summon the Laquari and then set Bottomless and set Starlight Road. So my game plan here is if he starts with Stratos, I didn't want to have to Bottomless it because I actually want to trade Laquari with Stratos, and then on my turn, I can either summon Darius, attack, get a quest, add back the Laquari that's fallen, or I can Proving Ground for something and then Darius back Laquari if I really need to. So I want to actually use the Laquari to trade with Stratos here because we only have one piece of monster removal, and this is a key piece of monster removal that we need for the fusions that he can summon. So if he starts off with Stratos, I do want to be able to trade it with Laquari, and that's why we don't lead on Darius here. Upstart Goblin is activated. He draws a new card. Trade-in is activated. He draws 2 new cards. Heavy Storm is activated. So you had Heavy Storm all 3 games, but we had rode 2 of those games, which is really important. He goes ahead and chains Typhoon, and here he makes an interesting decision. He can chain Typhoon and hit our other back row, which is maybe what I personally would have done, because a Stardust Dragon that doesn't come back is not the hardest thing to play through, especially for this hero deck. Whereas back row can sometimes be much, much harder for this hero deck to play through. So I might have considered hitting the other back row. When he hits his own Heavy Storm with Typhoon here, the way this works is because Starlight Road says destroy that card, then you can special summon 1 Stardust Dragon from your extra deck. Since Heavy Storm's Chainlink 1, Starlight Road's Chainlink 2, and Space Typhoon's Chainlink 3, Space Typhoon destroys Heavy Storm. So Starlight Road won't destroy Heavy Storm, and we won't be allowed to summon Stardust Dragon from our extra deck because that needs to happen in order for us to get that effect of the Starlight Road. So yeah, they special summon Cyber Dragon, and again, here I probably would have gone after the back row just because this is his thing. He's got Polymerization as well for Absolute Zero, which he can go for. We go ahead and Bottomless, And here I am just shocked he doesn't go for this polymerization for absolute 0. I absolutely would have done that. Instead, he sets the Snowman Eater, which I think is the greediest play in all of existence, because if I have Bestiari, like, you just immediately lose, which I do. So yeah, that's what happens. We go Geyserish, we blow up, we attack for 2400, deal that 2400, tag the fuck out of there. We could have grabbed our second Rediari here. I considered grabbing double Rediari, but it was really a risk of whether or not we wanted to play around Stratos versus whether or not we wanted to play around Miracle Fusion off the top. We know he doesn't have Stratos currently, but he probably plays more copies of Stratos than he does Miracle Fusion. The deck can play Stratos itself, Reinforcement of the Army, and up to 3 copies of Emergency Call. Even with only 2 copies of Emergency Call, that's still 4 copies of Stratos versus 3 copies of Miracle Fusion. So I think it's more optimal, instead of grabbing double Rediari to banish both monsters and play, I think it's best to play around Miracle Fusion, or it's best to play around Stratos off the top by grabbing Laquari plus Rediari. So now if he has Stratos off the top, we still have a stronger monster in play than that, and we can hold our position. So yeah, we go ahead and banish the hero. Again, I figured it's more likely he has something like King of the Swamp, which is another water that he can use for Miracle Fusion, and it's much less likely that he has another hero that he can actually summon alongside a Miracle Fusion. He would have to have the Miracle Fusion already in hand, which he would have used last turn, honestly, if we're being real. And then he would have also had to have a hero he could summon, which he probably would have done instead of one of these other cards. So yeah, pass the turn, he goes Upstart Goblin, we gain 1,000, and then he concedes a duel because he draws Miracle Fusion, but that Miracle Fusion is dead. So like I said, it's better here to play around the worst possible case scenarios. Now, it would have been a really close game had he actually gone for that polymerization and then found that Miracle Fusion. We probably would have lost, which is food for thought. That being said, he got a little greedy, and we were able to take this match. I didn't think this matchup would be so hard, but it has a lot of key cards that interact well with Gladiator Beasts, and it does kind of test our game plan. We didn't, unfortunately, oops, we got logged out here. We didn't, unfortunately, draw into our, wow, this is an experience. I'll just export this so we don't have to do this again. Sorry, guys. Yeah, we didn't draw into our super polymerization, which makes me kind of sad, because I think this is a really cool way to approach Glads in general, because you have that tutorable water, tutorable earth, etc. So it's just a really cool way to approach that matchup. So we didn't draw into it in this matchup, but maybe we will in the next replays. All right, this is actually the first match I played with this deck. So this is not, the last one I played was the second match I played with this deck. I just loaded them out of order. This is the very first match I played with this list, and this is against NDV91. I say good luck, have fun. He doesn't return the favor, which makes me kind of sad. I go ahead and draw for turn. I open up with Hoplimus, and I'm like, yo, this is kind of heat. I'm just going to set Hoplimus pass. I don't think there's really much that can attack over this guy. And if they attack into it, I can tag into Murmillo. Next turn, Proving Ground for Bestiari. This is pretty much a perfect hand. I can't really complain about this at all. So I just set my guy, and he summons Ember's Blade. I'm like, oh, that's pretty sick. But then he just sets a background pass. I'm like, what the fuck, man? Why didn't you attack? I wanted you to attack. I go ahead and just Typhoon his back row. He accidentally returns it to his hand, and he flashes me his hand here. I exit out of it as quickly as possible, just because I don't want that information to affect my gameplay. But unfortunately for me, I do see that he has all monsters. I didn't see which monsters they were, but I did see that he has all monsters. So that does influence my play here. So I go ahead and Proving Ground for Bestiari, and it influences my play for the worse. You'll see. I summon Bestiari, I tag out into Geyserish, and I pop his monster. Now, if this happens to you guys in a casual game in the future, or a DB game in the future, just copy and paste the log. You don't have to show your opponent the hand, because it definitely affects the way the game is played. Geyserish to pop the Ember's Blade, attack for 2400. And then I do believe I make Rediari and Laquari here. I have Book of Moon to protect myself from Full Helm Knight. I just want to keep his graveyard empty for Full Troll, Godam Z-Call, and potentially Full Helm Knight plus Book of Moon. Again, I didn't see what monsters he had in his hand. I didn't see what was happening. I just saw he had 4 monsters. I clicked out of it as soon as possible. I set 2 back row. He summons Breaker. That procs our Bottomless. Bottomless is usually dead versus X-Sabers. The only card it hits is Air Bellum. So I just go ahead and Bottomless the Breaker. Now, the way Breaker works is if this card is normal summoned, place 1 spell counter on it, that effect starts a chain. So with turn player priority, you have to pass priority before you can activate Breaker's second effect, because that effect starts a chain, and then chain link 2, I can activate Bottomless before he can use the effect to destroy spells and traps on the field. So yeah, he goes ahead and sets a back row, and I'm like, okay, what are the chances he top decked Torrential Tribute? 100 fucking percent. So yeah, he top decked Torrential Tribute, and I'm like, all right, that's cool. Normally X Sabers doesn't play Torrential Tribute, first off, because you need your anchor monster in order to combo off, but I guess this guy is, and he just happened to draw it, so here we are. And because I didn't look at his hand, and because I didn't realize he had Airbellum in his hand, I sequenced the Book of Moon and the Bottomless differently, because I'm like, okay, against X Sabers, you want Book of Moon because it can stop Full Home, can stop all that other shit. Summons Airbellum, I'm like, well, fuck me. I would have sequenced it differently, you know? But I obviously wouldn't have played into the Torrential either had I not seen his hand. But yeah, I booked his Airbellum and passed the turn. We draw Smashing Ground, and we just fall apart here. It's really bad. He could do a bunch of different stuff here. He could summon Ragigura, special Fall Troll, synchro into Armory Arm, bring back the Ragigura, add back the Airbellum, start doing some crazy shit. But he doesn't. He just flips Airbellum and attacks. We have to book it again. We could have just left the field open, but if we leave the field open, then he summons a monster, and then special summons Fall Troll if that's the case. So I need to set book in case he has summon monster special Fall Troll. I draw Heavy Storm. I go for it. I pass the turn. He goes summon second Airbellum, attack. We drop Gores. But at this point, we just fucking lose because he flips Raikou, and I'm just like, yeah, we just lose. He can make Stardust Dragon. There's nothing in our deck we can top deck over Stardust Dragon, and that's just it. We lose. So we go to game 2. This matchup's pretty good for Glads if you just don't play like an idiot. So yeah, we just open up Hoplomist, set Dust, set Bottomless, pass. I don't need to set Chariot because I don't have a face-up Glad. He just sets a back row passes. We unface Dust it, set our Chariot here just to get that guy down. Draw Icarus attack, which is phenomenal because we have this Bestiary. We just go ahead and summon. Attack with both and tag out the Hoplomist, I believe, for Laquari. Yep. Set Icarus, set book, pass. If he had Heavy Storm last turn, he would have used it. So he doesn't have it unless he top decks it. He blind Typhoons. He does hit our Bottomless, which is fine. I left these in just because he had breakers. And I'm assuming he was playing like Cat and shit. So I was like, normally I side these out, but because of those breakers, I left him in. He set a back row. Here we just go for Geyserist, blow up the back row. He chains it. It's that damn Torrential again, but I'm like, that's fine. I can go Hoplomist into Darius, special the Geyserist. And then I can have an Anchor Monster plus an Icarus target as well, which is really nice. So yeah, we just go 700, tag out into Darius special Geyserist, pass the turn. And he concedes, which is awesome. Really, really cool. This matchup, like I said, is pretty easy. This game we open up with 5 interactive spells and traps, but no monster. So we'll see if we're able to do anything with this. We go ahead and just T-set, or not T-set, set 2. We set Compulsory and set Bottomless, pass the turn. He goes ahead and blind Typhoons. Now this is usually not a smart play to blind Typhoon when you have Raikou. It's infinitely better to flip that Raikou first and target the back row and save your Typhoon. Because Typhoon is, well, I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's a reason why you would Typhoon here instead of, maybe he wants to I think you flip Raikou first. Like I'm pretty sure you flip the Raikou first and then you Typhoon second. Because of specifically Compulsory, but also because of things like, I don't know. I think it's just better if you have both removal sets. It's better to go for the Raikou first because of Compulsory. So we get him here. Slight sequencing error from the opponent there. We bounce his Raikou. He summons Breaker, but because we did leave in those Bottomless, we are able to clip that Breaker, which is really nice. And now we have the Summon Initiative, which is really good for us, and we do draw a card that allows us to summon. Do I want to summon here? Yes. Yes, I do. So I calculate my options. I know that this deck does usually play heavy counts of Book of Moon, but I also figured it might also play Bottomless Trap Hole, especially in the post-board games. And so what I'm thinking of doing is going Rediari Attack to try and see what he's about. In hindsight, I probably should have gone Equest or Bestiari Attack because I need to have my Icarus attack live, or I should have just done nothing. The reason I didn't do nothing is because I was scared, and by do nothing I mean set some back row, like set Dust, set Icarus, set Chariot, something like that. The reason I didn't do nothing is I was a little bit scared of Heavy Storm. I was also a little bit scared of just Airbell and Poke and ripping my hand apart. And I just didn't want to put myself in like a dicey position. I kind of wanted to see if I could get the Ready Ari attack in. If it isn't Book of Moon, then maybe it's something like Saber Hole or Godam Z-Call or like one of those like shitty back row that Bestiari can pop. So maybe I can go Ready Ari, attack, tag into Bestiari, Bestiari blow up his back row and then set a bunch and just be in a really good spot. So I went for a bit of a greedier play here, and I attack. And even though the Ready Ari does get a +1 functionally by clipping this Book of Moon, it does put us in a bad spot where we actually don't really have a way to remove a monster now. So we do set 3, pass, summons Full Helm Knight. This isn't too bad for us because he doesn't have an X Saber Engrave, so he can't bring anything back with the Full Helm Knight. And phase we Dust Tornado his back row, and it was another Book of Moon. We draw Trap Stun, which is pretty fucking bad, but I can go for the Smashing Ground to at least keep him off of a Fall Troll play. And then we set this Trap Stun and pass the turn. We do need to find a monster, but if we find a monster, we're just killing it. He sets back row. We set Solemn, pass. He flips Raikou, targets a new one. He targeted this really fast. I would have actually considered Solemning this Raikou had he not targeted. He mills 3. Normals Airbell him, and I'm like, that's fine. We'll take some damage here. Maybe he makes a Synchro, but I was pretty much in a situation where I needed to top deck a Glad anyway, so it's not really that big of a deal, and most likely he'll make Catastrophe or Android, right? Not Gashilnodon, which I don't even know if he can make Gashilnodon. Doesn't it need waters? I don't really know what Gashilnodon needs, but I'm pretty confident he'll make one of those two, which died a Chariot, so if I draw a monster. So I'm at a position where I need to draw a monster to play, but if I do draw a monster, I'm actually killing it, so he doesn't end up synchroing, which is nice. We draw Hoplimus, I summon it, which is a really dicey play because it does play into Saber Hole really, really hard. It plays into Saber Hole like crazy hard. I was thinking maybe I flip Trap Stun first, but I was just saying like fuck it, you know, like I want to get value out of my Trap Stun. I want to get +1 value out of my Trap Stun. I'm behind in cards. I'm behind in position. I'm going to take the gamble that he doesn't have Saber Hole. I'm actually going to take the gamble that he has something like Godam Z-Call, or like he has something that, like Call of the Haunted, or another Book of Moon, something like that, you know what I mean? Maybe even Bottomless, maybe even Mirror Force, maybe even Torrential, which we know he plays. Interesting that he did leave in that Trap Dust Shoot versus Gladiator Beast. And we're just attacking this Raikou. He takes 500, and yeah, so he didn't end up having that Saber Hole, which is good, because that was a bit of a risk from us. Also, Solemn Judgment does punish us pretty hard here. We are able to go into a quest to activate, add back Ready Ari, and I'm able to chain Icarus attack to this Bottomless Trap Hole and get my basically 2 for 4 because the quest replaces itself, and then Icarus attack destroys 2 cards and the Bottomless. So it's a 2 for 4, which is really, really nice. That being said, if he has another Airbellum here, I get fucked because he attacks me and I discard my Ready Ari. But thankfully, he only has a Full Helm Knight, which still sucks because we can't really get over it, but we need to draw a monster, you know. We draw another War Chariot, which sucks. I considered, so there's a play you can make here versus good players, which is summon the Ready Ari, attack the Full Helm Knight, and if he activates the Full Helm Knight, we can Chariot it. So it creates an interesting dynamic, but I don't think he's that good of a player, just based off of the way he's been playing these games, the premature concession in the last game, etc. Because I have that read on him, he is a Dueling Book random. I'm not going to go for this Ready Ari bluff. I'm just going to hope, I'm going to play it safe and try to top deck something, and then I'll go for the bluff if I absolutely have to later on. Here he draws a card for turn, attacks for 1300. We drop down to 36, and he sets another back row. Thankfully, we draw a Smashing Ground, so I do just activate that Smashing Ground and summon the Ready Ari. There is consideration to summoning the Ready Ari first, but like I said, Saber Hole is now a problem. So I think it's better to Smashing Ground first because of Saber Hole. Yes, of course, I can summon Ready Ari, and maybe he has Torrential or Bottomless or whatever, and I can Trap Stun it. but I think it's much better to Smashing Ground first because of specifically Saber Hole. We can't chain traps onto that because it's spell speed 3. Here I attack for 12, he goes Mirror Force, we go Trap Stun, and he leaves the duel. So, yeah, no GG's, no good luck, have fun. Never play me again. Nah, I'm just kidding. I think this matchup's pretty good for Glads. I think the opponent had a lot of opportunities to, I think, take a better advantage of this game. When he didn't synchro with the Raikou, that was really interesting to me. But he did end up having that Saber Hole, so it's a good thing we went for that Smashing Ground. I just checked it right now. Wow. Good shit. All right. Third match. Can I play against a real deck fucking online, please? God damn it. The answer is yes. We finally got a real deck. Finally. Against Plus HD. He's going to go ahead and summon Deep Sea Diva, and he's going to make Ally of Justice Catastor, set a couple of back row, and pass the turn. So here, he allows us to go to the main phase. Normally, when people make Ally of Justice Catastor, it means they have deck Devastation Virus. And it also means that they're playing Diva Hero or a deck that wants this dark, like a Dark Arm Synchro deck, like Zombies with Gilman, which is a vibe, you know. We have a couple of ways we could approach this. We could Smashing Ground, we could summon Murmillo first, and I think to myself that the best play here is actually summon Murmillo first. Even though if we Smashing Ground, what was the fucking thing? If we Smashing Ground first and he chains Deck Dev, we can still Proving Ground and summon a guy and attack. I don't even know if I really want to do that in one back row. And if he doesn't have Deck Dev, I want to summon Murmillo and then Smashing Ground. So I think, like, in the off chance he doesn't have Deck Dev, I want to do things the other way. And then also, if I summon Murmillo, he might get trigger happy and just shotgun the Deck Dev. So that's what I do. I summon Murmillo, and he shotguns the Deck Dev, which is a misplay. And this is why. You see this card in play, Murmillo. This card cannot out Ally of Justice Catastor. There's just no way. There's no way it can out Ally of Justice Catastor. I have to spend another card to out that Ally of Justice Catastor. When I spend that other card, then you chain Deck Dev. So for example, let's say my game plan is Murmillo attack book, or Smashing Ground, or, you know, set a bunch of back row including a Chariot, right? Because I can't out Ally of Justice Catastor with just the Murmillo, you can wait until the opportune moment where you could potentially get a 2-for-2 out of this deck Devastation Virus instead of just a 2-for-1. And thankfully for us, we have no other targets in our hand. This is another benefit to playing Tigerless, so you don't really lose to the deck Devastation Virus main deckers out there. But we go ahead and set 3 and pass the turn. He's set 2, so I'm under the impression that he doesn't have Heavy Storm in his hand, and I just want to make sure all of these cards are live. In the case of something like a Miracle Fusion or whatnot, next turn we do want to be able to Gladiator Beast for, or Gladiator Proving Ground for Gladiator Beast Bestiari, or a quest. Probably Bestiari because I want to tag into a quest to get my Murmillo back, and then try to have a Wing Beast for our Icarus. So he just goes Allure of Darkness, Banish Dark Grepher, which is good for him. Goes ahead and sets a couple more back row and just passes the turn, which is best case scenario for us, honestly. We draw Laquari, we reveal it to Deck Dev, so right now a nice 2-for-1 Deck Dev for us. Our deck isn't hurt too badly by Deck Dev. If you look at the deck list, there are 5-6 cards that get hit by it, 7 cards that get hit by it, but thanks to the Proving Ground, the Call of the Haunted, and like cards like eQuest and stuff, we have a decent way of playing out of it. We do have seven hits, right? Jar plus the 3 Hoplimus plus Murmillo, Rediari, and Bestiari, but we just got, I think, a little bit lucky here that we only drew one of them. We go ahead and activate that Proving Ground, go grab Bestiari, because we do want our Icarus to be live into Bottomless, so I summon the Bestiari. Here we go for the 2-for-3 Icarus, but he does have that Typhoon, and that Typhoon's going to hit the Chariot. I'm actually so happy that he 50-50'd on this Chariot, because Chariot's a card we can easily reacquire, whereas Compulsory Evacuation Device, it's a crucial out to stuff like Stardust Dragon or Absolute Zero from this deck, and it's not a card that we can easily reacquire. So losing Gladiator Beast War Chariot here makes me actually pretty happy. It's also going to be dead on his turn anyway because our normal summon got stopped. This is another reason I really like Icarus Attack in this deck. It just helps you play through really established boards like this one. Normally, it can be really difficult for Glads to press through like a bunch of resolved threats, but Icarus Attack just lets you do that with only one normal summon, so I really like this card in this deck. Yeah, so even though it's a 3 for 3, it's a pretty good 3 for 3 for us because we get Bestiari out of our deck and in the graveyard, so the deck dev is one less potential target, and he hit the War Chariot, which we can easily grab back with the quest. This turn, we draw Darius, so thankfully missing again on that deck devastation. We summon that Darius, attack for 17. We had a couple of options here. I did want to get the Darius back in the deck and get eQuest up in this bitch, basically, so we can add back that War Chariot. We could have tried to make Geyserus and then blow up his other back row, but I figured just getting the War Chariot was best for us. He draws again, he finds Malicious. He can do a couple of different things here. He can special the evil guy and sack for Malicious, or he can brain control our monster and sack for Malicious. A couple of different options. I would have considered going evil guy sack for Malicious, but the issue is when he goes for the end phase draw effect, we can actually War Chariot that and then just loop the Chariot back, which is bad for him. We draw our main deck Rediari, which is bad, but we can just summon it and swing into the back row. We know at this point the back row is most likely a bluff or a dead card. We tag for another 16. We tag out here into Darius, special summon back the bestie. Tag into another Darius. This is one of my favorite plays. When you have 2 Glads in the grave and then you go double Darius, bring out 2 Glads, and then you basically just get a free Geyserus. So we go for that Geyserus, try to blow up his back row, and it's a second deck dev. This guy is main decking multiple deck devs, which is very ambitious. I honestly am not a fan of main decking more than one, and I also am not really a fan of main decking one because of literally what happened this game. If it misses, it's just such a bad card. It's like such a high roll card, especially versus a field full of hero beat. This card is trash versus hero beat. So I'm not a big fan of main deck dev right now. And in general, if you are going to main deck it, I think you only main deck the one. Main decking multiple just means you're going to brick on it at some point. Brain control is going to target the Geyserus. I decided to just compulsory my Geyserus. I could let him have it, but there's a risk here, right? If he has normal summon Plague, he can make Thought Ruler Archfiend, and we will be in an awkward spot versus that. Not a bad spot, but an awkward spot versus that. He'll summon it in defense position, and I guess we could just tag in a Murmillo. This is a misplay on my part. Now that I'm thinking about it, I should have just let him have the Geyserus. Because if he sacks it for Caius, we just Chariot. So who cares, right? And if he synchros into anything that's not Thought Ruler, then we can compulsory it. And if he synchros into Thought Ruler, he attacks over the Darius, gains life points, we can Chariot that. And if he doesn't attack, then we can just crash Chariot or Smashing Ground. I think it's a misplay for me to use the compulsory here. But I figured, like, let's just close this game out. He specials Evil Guy, and I'm like, if he has Caius, we have Chariot, and he knows about it. We draw Morphing Jar. Funnily enough, the turn after deck dev is over. We go ahead and just attack for 17. Drop him down to 1,000. Yeah. Tag out into Rediari. Tag out into Bestiari. Blow up. He goes Reckless Greed, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Because if he does draw into a Miracle Fusion, he's kind of living. And it got me thinking about Diva Hero with Reckless Greed. Not a bad idea. Not a bad tech here from our opponent. I actually think that this is kind of a cool idea for this type of deck. He finds Morphing Jar and Sirocco the Dawn. A little bit of a sneak preview of what's to come. We go ahead and just tag out into Geyserus because if he has something like normal summon a 1900 alias guy, I just want to have Geyserus here. He goes set Jar pass, and we just summon the Quarry, and that's going to be game because we have Chariot for the Jar, and he knows that. So, yeah. I took a screenshot of how we sided. This whole game was dictated by when he used that deck dev. Food for thought. Let me go ahead and show you guys a snapshot of how I sided in this matchup. I believe this is it. No, this is not it. One moment. This is the snapshot of how I sided. So we sided out Gores, Morphing Jar, Heavy Storm. I sided out Trap Stun, 1 Icarus, and 1 Hoplimus. I'm not sure if this is correct. But because he did have those deck devastation viruses, I kind of want to decide lower on targets. So cards like Morphing Jar, cards like Hoplimus in particular is a card I would have left in versus the hero deck. Because he had so much deck devastation virus stock, I wanted to just take out as many targets as that as possible because I am bringing in another target in the Ready Ari. So I wanted to keep myself on 6 targets for that. And I think that's like the bare minimum. I could have sided out another Hoplimus over something like Gores or over something like Icarus Attack, but I figured we'd be all right. I sided in the Mind Crush, obviously the triple Super Poly, that's what they're here for. I sided in one-dimensional Fissure. I figured we probably wouldn't need 2 going second. I think 1 is plenty going second. And then I sided in the second Ready Ari as well. So let's go ahead and hop into that game 2. He says big fan, and I give him a little bit of a heart. So yeah. This hand is a little bit weaker. We do have a lot of monsters, none of which really plays super effectively into Stratos, but maybe we can crash the Laquari and figure something out. He sets a back row. We draw Proving Ground, which makes me very happy, because at this point we can go Proving Ground for Hoplimus. Just set that Hoplimus and kind of like see how he wants to act. He has a couple of options. He searched for the Evil Guy, which tells me he already has Malicious. If he goes for like Phoenix Wing, well, we fucking lose. Let's be real. Do I Typhoon here? I might even Typhoon first. I do Typhoon first to play around Phoenix Wing. Heads up play. Yeah, I was thinking if he has Phoenix Wing and we go Proving Ground for Hop, set Hop, we lose. So I went Typhoon, and it reveals he set Heavy Storm, which tells me a little bit about his circumstances. I go Proving Ground, grab the Hoplimus, and just T-set. There's consideration to setting not Hoplimus here. There's consideration to actually setting Ready Ari, because it is a mind game. It is a tactic. Is he going to attack into Hoplimus? Probably not. Let's be real. He's probably not going to just attack into Hoplimus. There are some circumstances where he might want to, but more realistically, what he's going to do is he's either going to commit a Caius or he's going to commit a tuner like Deep Sea Diva. In which case we bottomless the Synchro. And I was thinking, okay, so if he commits Deep Sea Diva and he summons Gilman, it's bad to set Ready Ari. And then also if he commits Caius and banishes our Hoplimus, or not our Hoplimus, our Ready Ari, that is a little bit more annoying. However, it is nice to keep the Hoplimus for reasons. The thing is that Ready Ari can be a super poly target if they have a Destiny hero or an evil hero, like that evil guy that we know they searched. Whereas Hoplimus can only be a super poly target when they have an elemental hero, which is Elemental Hero Stratos or Elemental Hero Absolute Zero. So I thought there was a little bit more equity in keeping the Ready Ari in case we top decked Super Polymerization. So we set the Hoplimus here. It's an interesting decision, but I think it's correct to set Hoplimus. And then he could also just call our bluff and swing. So there's a reason to set the Hoplimus. He goes for Plague, which makes me pretty happy. It means we're going to get equity here, so one way or another. He goes Malicious, Priority Activate, and he pitches a Water, which is dangerous. But realistically, he could pitch another card here and resolve a Miracle Fusion regardless. So I think we actually need to chain the Bottomless. He targets the set monster, and I'm like, okay. So if we don't chain the Bottomless and we save it for the Miracle, he'll just pitch another card and resolve the Miracle regardless, and we'll take a shitload of damage, 5,300, and we'll have this Bottomless, which didn't answer shit. So I think we just have to chain Bottomless to the Bionic and figure out our way through an Absolute Zero here. We have a good amount of ways of dealing with a resolved Absolute Zero. We've got those 3 Super Poly. We've got 2 Smashing Ground. We've got double Compulsory. We've got Icarus Attack, Mirror Force as well, and Shrink as well. Plus, Book of Moon, technically, it gives us a -1 out to it because we can tag it in Murmillo. So we have a lot of outs. I want to say 1, 2, 3, what this whole row is. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 outs to a resolved Absolute Zero if he goes for a Miracle Fusion here. So we'll chain that Bottomless, and he does have that Miracle Fusion, so he goes for Absolute Zero, attacks for 2,500. Sets back row, passes a turn. We draw Icarus, which is the best out. And it also makes me feel a little bit silly for siding out that second Icarus. I probably should have just left it in. This is one of those decks that going first can make a quick Stardust Dragon, and that's why I sided out the Icarus, but it's just such a good card. Icarus Attack, it's just such a powerful card that you should probably always leave the 2 copies in. We go ahead and T-set. He goes Rhoda, which is, understandable. He grabs Dark Grepher. And here he makes an interesting play. Not a good play, but an interesting one. He pitches to special the Grepher. and then activates the Greffer, revealing a little bit more about his deck, sending value. I would have not made this play if I was him. What I would have done is actually normal summon the Dark Greffer, pitch the Malicious to send the value. And then I would have stacked the Evil Guy for Plague, banished the Malicious, specialed it, and then tried to make Stardust. That's what I would have done. This, however, not so good of a play. He goes ahead and attacks, and this gives us the best possible Icarus attack. Now he can no longer make that Stardust Dragon this turn, so we can actually Icarus attack, destroy the Absolute Zero and his back row, and because we sided in that second Ready Ari, we'll be able to attack over the Dark Greffer with Laquari, tag into the second Ready Ari, and banish the Plague Spreader. So, yeah, we'll blow up both cards. He attacks for 17. We do drop pretty low here, and we top deck Super Poly. And this is exactly why. You guys made it this far in the video. You can see exactly why I'm in love with this triple Super Poly tech into this Miracle Fusion Everywhere metagame. I can go ahead and summon Laquari, attack over Dark Greffer, dealing 100 damage, tag out into Ready Ari, banishing that Plague, setting the Super Poly, and now it's virtually impossible for me to lose this here. He could draw Sirocco, sure, but then we just set Hoplomys and we have kind of a situation, you know? But any other draw for him is pretty fucking bad. Like, at this point. He just passes the turn. Reveal his hand at his Phoenix Wing, which doesn't do anything. I summon a second Ready Ari. I want to get this bad boy back in the deck. So we go ahead and attack for 12, attack for 12. And we tag out one of the Ready Aris for Equest. Equest adding back Bestiari, which makes our Super Poly have a free discard. We will discard that Bestiari given the opportunity, because having it in the graveyard makes it easily accessible for that Darius one summon Bestiari, or one summon Geyser's play. He draws another card, he sets a back row, passes the turn. Oh, he goes at Allure of Darkness first. Blind. Hits Sirocco, but is forced to banish it, sets back row, passes. So I'm assuming this is the Phoenix Wing. It is. We go ahead and go into Geyser's to force that back row. He is forced to Phoenix Wing the Geyser's here. He could have Phoenix Winged the back row and hoped to top deck something. Top deck Miracle Fusion or top deck a Tuner. So I think that this play from him is not the best, but if he goes after the back row, the Geysers can connect and we can make Heraklinos, which shuts off the majority of stuff. Well, I don't know. I guess we could go back into Ready Ari, banish the Malicious, banish the value. No, I guess he does have to just hit the Geyser's. Yep. And we just attack for 12, and we just leave the Ready Ari here, because what are you going to do? You know? Set back row pass, we summon Hop. Switch the Ready Ari, because I do need this in play, in case he does top deck a Tuner. Like, let's say his set card is Mirror Force, right? If he top decks a Tuner, he can go Tuner plus Malicious. So I need to attack for 700 here. Connect this, tag out, grab Bestie, blow up the back row. He chains Bottomless, we chain Compulse, put that Bestiari back in our hand. And now we have Bestiari access yet again, and a great pitch to our Super Poly. He goes ahead and finds Diva, summons Diva, and grabs Diva. And I'm super happy he didn't grab Gilman here, because this basically pigeonholes him into activating Malicious. It's possible he sided out the Gilman. Who knows? He goes activate Malicious, banish, special Malicious, and then here, to interrupt his Synchro play, we can Super Poly. Now, of course, even if he had grabbed the Gilman, he's going to go for the Malicious main phase 1 to make Stardust Dragon before attacking anyway, or Thought Ruler before attacking anyway. So, this play still would have worked, but he then would have been able to make a 5-star at the very least, Catastor, which can out our Absolute Zero, and we would have been in a kind of a bad spot. So, the fact that he made double Diva here is really good for us, and we actually top deck Murmillo for a really cheeky kill, putting our Absolute Zero up to 4,000, and we're able to attack Deep Sea Diva for a game. This was kind of a perfect, picture-perfect match. Everything kind of went our way, but you do have to think about all of the ways in which it could have not gone our way when reflecting on this. The Super Polymerization was very good. That card did successfully do what I wanted it to do in this matchup. The compulsories and the Icarus attacks were very good. The other cards in this deck, I'm not so sure about. He says, now I see why you didn't tack out 2-Pro. Exactly. And then we go for that lethal shot. But that being said, I think if you're playing Glads, in general, you need a few things to go right for you besides just the metagame assessment and having the right tech cards. But I do think it has a place in today's meta. I don't always think Gladiator Beast has a place in the meta, particularly when Black Wings is very popular. But I think you can definitely build Glads in a way similar to this, or like copy this list or whatever, and have a pretty good shot into decks like Hero Beat. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.